Are expected to fly as the president's former fixer and personal lawyer will testify publicly on Capitol Hill. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump is on the other side of the world, beginning his second summit with Korean leader Jong in Vietnam. We have team coverage for you this morning. Susan McGinnis on Capitol Hill covering Cohen. But we begin with Naima Abdullahi live in the newsroom. And Naima, the president just now meeting with North Korea's leader Jong.
Right, and this is such a highly anticipated meetup. Now let's take a look right now of President Donald Trump meeting with North Korea's leader Jong. They have shaken hands. They have met at the meeting location, and so many people are gathering right now, ready for the countdown. President Donald Trump is optimistic about his second meeting with the North Korean leader in Vietnam. Here's a video of moments ago. Here's video from moments ago of President Trump tweeting out that there are two things that he's hoping will come out of this meeting, focusing on denuclearizing North Carolina and how to make the country an economic powerhouse. Now, the two leaders could not reach an agreement during their first summit last June in Singapore, but both sides want to come to some understanding. President Trump says he'll try again to convince him to denuclearize once again.
Hopefully it's going to be successful. We'll see what happens. But he wants to do something great also.
And correction, we meant to say North Korea. Now, the two leaders will meet for most of the day, so we'll keep monitoring that. We now go to Susan McGinnis on Capitol Hill covering Michael Cohen's highly anticipated public testimony.
Yeah, the president's former attorney is supposed to bring a veritable dump truck of information about his years with Donald Trump. In his leaked opening statement, which has not been verified by NBC, he evidently is going to say he is ashamed and called Donald Trump a racist, a con man, and a cheat. And here's what Michael Cohen had to say ahead of his testimony.
And I look forward to tomorrow, to being able to, in my voice, to tell the American people my story. And I'm going to let the American people decide exactly who's telling the truth.
He will allegedly outline criminal conduct by Donald Trump as president. The White House calling this pathetic, to give Cohen an opportunity to spread his lies. Cohen also will allegedly apologize for lying to the committee in his first appearance there, lying the reason he'll be going to prison in May.
President Trump expected to be back in his hotel room in Vietnam to watch that public testimony, and we will bring it to you live. Stay with 11 Alive. NBC will have a special report on Cohen's public hearing beginning at 9:45 this morning. We'll also stream it on 11alive.com and on our Facebook page.